as the uncertainty around the war in Iran ramps up once more. Goldman Sachs also downgrading their forecast for Japan. Joining us now is Tomohiro Ota, Senior Japan Economist at Goldman Sachs. Always good to see you. So, are we talking about where are we going to see the spillover from the impact of the Iran war in the Japanese economy first?
Yeah, basically the main kind of channel must be that the Middle East turmoil, and then which raise our inflation in Japan, and which lower the real wage in Japan, and then that lower the consumption growth. So that's the main reason why that we downgraded our focus.
Which is quite the difference from where we came last year when we thought real wages were finally starting to pick up.
Indeed.
So how much of an impact are we talking about?
Yeah, so basically we only revised down our consumption focus marginally by mainly two reasons. One, the inflation would not accelerate massively because of the comprehensive price control measures by Japanese government. So that's the fuel price is still contained in Japan, and that helps. And the second, another important thing is Japanese silver elderly household works as a shock absorber against a negative shock. And that's another reason why we didn't downgrade consumption much.
Elderly households are a large part of Japan's economy?
Yeah, actually in Japan, more than 50% of household is actually above 60 years old or above. And actually their consumption behavior is really different from the younger generation, because basically in almost all younger generation, when the real income goes up, they increase their consumption, and vice versa. But for elderly household, even if their real income goes up, they never change their consumption. Even if the real income goes down, still they maintain the same consumption. Maybe partly because their consumption pattern is quite conservative, and basically they have already retired, so they do not get the wage. So they don't care about the real wage growth anymore, and they have saving. So even if they don't have enough income from the pension, public pension, for example, they just withdraw money from that.
That is so interesting that Japan has a stable buffer of elderly consumers. You mentioned how the government could really help out in sort of absorbing some of the shock from higher energy prices, inflation. But for how long, especially if we're talking about supply chain disruptions, not only here in Japan, but all across Asia in the region?
Yeah. So this is basically that Japan has continued this price control measure in the last 4 years. So basically they have the big, long history. So it's not very easy for Japanese government to stop the price control measures sometime very soon. And so far, they didn't show any of such kind of signal. But if the situation gets worse, and then the inflation rate or the fuel price shot up much, much higher, and then the fiscal burden someday contains those policies. But we don't really see this in the timely fashion.
Tomohiro, Avril in Singapore here. I just wanted to ask you as well, perhaps, yes, there is a bit of a buffer, but how do you think authorities are viewing the currency weakness? Because there seems to be less of an appetite to cap any of that at this stage. Is that your read of the situation? How do you think they're assessing the picture overall?
Yeah, so basically that, yes, we know dollar-yen is very at the weaker level. But basically, it has been stable somewhere around 150 to 160 rand in the last couple of years. So in that sense, actually, it is not a happy situation in terms of level. But basically, it no longer generates a massive inflation in Japan. That's one of the reasons why that Prime Minister Takaichi was a bit kind of relaxed, has maintained a relaxed tone against the currency level at this level.
And what are you expecting out of the BOJ later in the month?
Yeah, basically we have been focusing from the more than several months that the next rate hike will be July. That's our base case scenario. So because two reasons. Anyway, monetary policy will affect the real economy in 9 to 12 months lag. So if the kind of say what is happening is a transitory inflation, BOJ better to wait. And now, we can't even see what is going to happen next week. No, not a year ahead. So in such kind of the situation with a mounting uncertainty, the BOJ has a very good reason to postpone their policy decision.
I think we have to be very careful with the infamous transitory line when it comes to inflation. But let me ask you, so if they don't move, say, in July, and then they postpone it, then obviously we could expect more weakness for the yen. But why is it that you say that it has less of an impact on inflation now in Japan?
Yeah, so basically, it is still for the fuel price. Basically, we are roughly immune from any of those fuel price surge. But actually, the weak yen can affect the various different kind of goods prices. Mm-hmm. So because basically we import so many things, mm-hmm. so that those prices have no kind of price control measures. So if the dollar yen just depreciate massively, for example, and then that affects the inflation even bigger than what is happening. And then if those see, then the BOJ might worry that the second round effect, as we have seen in Europe in 2022. In those cases, BOJ might accelerate the rate hike timing. That's why we didn't think that the possibility of June is zero. So if we see the sign of the second round effect, BOJ will do the rate hike earlier.
Just super quickly, is it more of a concern if you have higher yields and then you have all of these concerns around paying for all of the debt?
At this moment, we do not worry about that because, yes, the interest rate is high, but the Japanese government paid interest rate is still 0.8% because the Japanese government had a huge backlog of the 10, 20 years bond, which they issued at the 0% interest rate.
Tomohiro Ota, always good to get your insights. Senior Japan economist at Goldman Sachs joining me here in the Tokyo studio. And of course, you can catch Japan Ahead every Monday at 8:40.